And that at least gives us a chance to have more candidates in the game and a better selection process. And I think that's the beginning of unraveling this political dilemma. I mean, clearly having two choices is wrong. There's so many other better choices. And so if you're not voting for those other choices every time you vote, then, well, then you're not voting your heart. You're not voting your conscience. If you're not doing that, if you're not voting with your heart and your conscience, then you're basically getting duped. If you're going to participate and vote, then you have to vote with a critical mind and a loving heart. And maybe you've convinced yourself that that means to vote for one of the top two candidates, but then you're not paying attention really, if you're really looking at it, because it's pretty obvious to see that these candidates are in cahoots. They're being controlled by big banker money. It's really obvious. In fact, most of Congress is. And so, if we wanted to take care of that problem, we would have to have a preference voting system style where we could start voting for candidates that we know are not participating with these big bankers who are buying the politicians. In fact, how could they afford it? If we started having a preference vote where we could put our top 20 candidates, everybody picks their top 20 people, that would be great on one level, because everybody then would have to think about 20 people that would be good for administrating the government, not leading us. They're not our leaders. We're not their slaves. They're supposed to be administrators for our government. And instead of doing that, they allowed themselves to get bought off by big money. And now they are setting up policies, code, and law. The legal system is set up for them to now be our leaders, as if we were chattel and slaves. And it's not, we still have hope. It's not over yet. We can still get ourselves out of this, but we're close to the end. If we don't get out of it soon, we're close to the end. We're close to being controlled completely, like we fought against 250 years ago to free ourselves from. It's sort of like, think of it this way, it's sort of like when the United States broke away from Great Britain. Well, at that moment when we successfully did that, it's sort of like Great Britain had a plan, not really Great Britain, but it's sort of like Great Britain had a plan to get back into controlling us. And it wasn't Great Britain that did it, England is also being controlled by big bankers. In fact, if you follow the history of money, it's interesting. It goes from Antwerp over in, around Holland. There was a huge banking industry, and there still is. But the history of money goes from the marketplace of Antwerp, and then it moved to England around 500 years ago. And that's where the world's money then resided, was in England, basically the world's money of the West, because the East always had their version as well, India and China. One of the reasons Great Britain wanted to go into India, of course, was due to that. Not just the natural resources, which is the story most of us know about, to get the cotton and all the, the rubber maybe, and all the other resources, natural resources India has. It wasn't just about that. They wanted to get their foothold into the banking industry of the East, of China. And they didn't do that. They were unsuccessful because, thank God, Gandhi, understood the power of civil disobedience. And that's our answer for us today, actually. Civil disobedience. It's maybe the only way, because if we start poking back, the bear has the best claw, and they can hurt us really bad if we poke that bear But if we all play dead, bears don't like to eat dead animals. They want to play around with the lives of these animals. I'm using this metaphor pretty far, but if you can catch my message here, you know, civil disobedience with no violence is going to be, I think, the answer. But that means, though, that we all have to be on board together to do it, which is why I love this internet so much, because I think we can get on board together with this media mode, unless they change it and control it someday. They keep trying to make it that way. But fortunately, we're fighting back and we won't let them. So, if we can have 20 candidates on the ballot, the big bankers will not be able to afford to pay for every banker, every candidate rather, on that ballot, to control them before they're even elected, which is what they do. The big bankers will come in and even before a candidate's elected, because there's only two of them, they can afford to pay these two people off. They'll pay both of them off and say, if you win, now you'll work with us. And then the bankers will eat it, whoever loses, they'll eat it. They'll take that loss of money that they paid to that loser, because that loser will also still be in the circle of power and, also have influence to some level. And even if they don't, it was just one investment for one person. So if we have this preference voting with 20 people, it will dilute that ability for big bankers to pay for these politicians before they're elected. And it could definitely help level the playing field. But let's see if I can get back into the spirit of guitar here.